Good morning everyone, my name is Michelle. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It is Friday morning and I'm not doing a voiceover today. The weather has calmed down a lot. It's not driving rain, it's not massive winds. The wind's actually changed direction and it's northerly, so it might be lovely looking, but it's cold. It's just over freezing at the moment, so yeah, it's cold. Not too cold, it's fine. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the Delphi case again this morning and Richard Allen. So I've got a lot to say about Richard Allen, and I'm just kind of trying to work out what order to do things in. But today I want to think about motive, and I want to think about the commission of the crime, given that he apparently has no previous convictions. And I find it hard to believe that there aren't more victims out there. Not necessarily murders, like people are saying, you know, is this a potential serial killer? I'm not saying that. No, he might have murdered before, he could do. But what tends to happen with people who commit violent murders which have a sexual motive, there's a build up to it, usually. But when something so brutal, we know that there's a large amount of blood loss. We see that from the warrant, Ron Logan. There's a description there of when the girls were found. Large amount of blood loss would mean blood spatter on the killer's clothing or person, and it was brutal. Now, I did a short video yesterday when it came out that the judge was afraid for his family, and he's since in the editing of that video, the judge had actually recused himself. So by the time I put the video out, the judge had already recused himself. So it came out in the news that he was afraid for his family. And then shortly after, it must have only been about 30 minutes after, he'd recused himself. So there will be another judge. Those documents are interesting. However, the charging summary is more interesting to me. And as I talked about in that video, go and watch it. The definition of the type of murder that he's been charged with under Indiana state law is very revealing. So go and watch that video. I'll leave a link to it in the cards right there. So I think there was a sexual motive. So offenders who commit sexual murders, sexualized murders. Yeah, I'm using the word sexual. Pretty much all of my Delphi videos have been demonetized, so I don't care anymore. Oh, but to make up for it, if anybody's willing to super thanks me, I never ask for super thanks, never. But yeah, these videos are all getting demonetized, so yeah, if anybody can throw a couple of dollars in the pot, you're very welcome to do so, only if you can afford it. The only time he's ever fallen foul of the law, some traffic violations, minor, unimportant, and there was a call out to a domestic incident. Now that doesn't appear to have been him beating his wife up. Not much details out there about it, but it was a call to the cops regarding a domestic incident. Nothing to do with extreme violence, nothing to do with sexual offences. So yeah, so had he been committing sexual offences, I'm loath to say lower level sexual offences because all such offences are horrible. But I'm thinking more like viewing explicit material, being involved in a ring that is sharing explicit material of minors. And here I'm kind of bringing in the Kleins. I'm trying to desperately find a connection between Richard Allen and the Kleins. And there's nothing obvious out there, guys, nothing obvious out there. So although Richard Allen was born and raised in Mexico, Indiana, in Miami County, same county as Peru, where Tony and Kegan lived. Tony still lives, I believe. It's only 5 miles away. And I've kind of checked out, did Tony and Richard go to the same school? They're very close in age. Richard's 50. I think Tony's a little bit older, maybe a couple of years older. His birthday's 69. I'd have to check that, but yeah, they're very similar age, and I wondered whether they'd gone to school together, but it doesn't appear so. Or did Richard meet Kegan, not Tony, as a result of Kegan's Anthony Shots profile and all of that nonsense he was doing? You know, pretending to be someone else, catfishing underage girls so that they'd send him explicit photos. So is Richard involved in that? Still criminal, but flown under the radar. And he got to a point where he wanted to act out a fantasy. And that was his motive. Now, if that's the case, I don't think he's done this on his own. I don't. I think the Kleins are involved somewhere. I really do. But we've got to consider every possibility. We don't know yet. All the documents are sealed. Those of us covering the Delphi case are theorising and nothing more at this moment in time. We might be way off the mark, all of us might be way off the mark. And that's okay, because we're just hypothesising based on the information we know and keeping it as close to the facts as possible, not going off on wild tangents or anything like that. But let's consider the possibility that he did this completely on his own, that he'd built up this fantasy life all on his own, and that everything to do with Kegan Kline and Anthony Shots and Kegan Kline's search for the Marathon gas station, which was dead close to Richard Allen's home, all of that was just coincidental. Kegan Kline's communication with Libby, all just coincidental. As I said in my video yesterday, it's too many coincidences for me. A whole string of coincidences theoretically could have occurred, and all of that could be one thing, and Kegan needs to be charged appropriately. Sidebar, have you seen Kegan's had some of his charges dropped? He's had 5 of his charges dropped. He's been charged with 30 felony counts and he's had 5 of them dropped. Is that something to do with a plea bargain? Is that something to do with being rewarded for spilling his guts? Or is that just yet another coincidence? Oh man. But yeah, getting to the point. Is it just a coincidence? And did Richard act alone? If so, I'm going to hypothesize that he was taking part in low-level crimes, as in viewing, and again, I'm loath to say low-level crimes. Well, actually, what I should say is non-contact. Let's call it non-contact offences. So he was committing non-contact offences by viewing child images, and he's just never been caught. And he had this kind of built-up repression, built-up maybe resentment of his life. I don't know what his relationship was like with his wife. You know, her stuff on Facebook, you know, there was dancing in a bar, playing pool or snooker or whatever he was playing. You know, but what people put on Facebook is often not reality. It's fake book, isn't it, as Duty Ron calls it, rather than Facebook. So, you know, this imagery of a happy life quite often isn't the case. I mean, look at the Chris Watts case. I mean, Chris, look, he's another one who had this real Mr. Nice Guy image. People thought Chris was quiet, introverted, but very mild-mannered, didn't lose his temper. And Shanann was the kind of dominant one, like the ambitious one, the go-getter in life. A complete clash, perhaps, for Chris. But often opposites attract and work. Relationships like that often work. Because one of them is happy to be the breadwinner, the dominant one, the ambitious one. And the other one is happy to, go to work, but is happy to stay in the background. And I guess be told what to do, and they prefer it that way. But with Chris Watts, I believe there was a building up, a resentment, a build-up of anger, if you will. And then when he met Nicole Kassinger, then his whole kind of thought process changed. And he became more resentful. He wanted to leave, didn't know how to. And unfortunately, that resulted in him strangling Shanann, suffocating his two beautiful daughters, Bella and Cece, and putting their bodies in oil tanks. At his work site, his job site, Survey 319, girls, one in each oil tank, and Shanann and the unborn baby Nico in a shallow grave close to that job site. Nobody expected Chris to do that. In fact, it's so hard to believe, that people have speculated, did he really do it? I think he did. I've got a lot of Chris Watts videos if you want to go and check out my Chris Watts playlist. I'll leave it in the cards there for you. Got loads of Chris Watts videos going through the entire discovery, all the body cam, everything. Got into depth on that case. It's the first case on this channel that I covered in depth. With Chris Watts, there was a motive, right? It seemed to come out the blue to everybody that knew him, but there was a motive. He wanted to leave, he wasn't happy, and he didn't know how to deal with that. He didn't know how to deal with those feelings, the outcome of that. And this built up resentment and repression just spilled over. But quite often when somebody spills over like that, they've been bottling everything up for a long time, the killing that they end up doing is overkill. Like they injure the victim, they abuse the victim, stab the victim, whatever, many more times than is needed to actually kill them or to commit what other crime they might be doing, whether it's a sexual crime, a robbery, etc., on top of the actual killing. So that's called overkill. Now with Chris Watts, we didn't see that. We didn't see overkill. Shanann, actually, I've got a video on Shanann's autopsy, and I've got another on Bella and Cece's autopsy. Shanann didn't have a lot of injuries. She wasn't beaten. She was strangled. But she was strangled in somewhat of a gentle way. Like, the only force used was to kill her. There wasn't anything additional. Same with the girls. I think the overkill in Chris's situation, in the Chris Watts case, was putting the girls in the oil tanks. That was some kind of Chris Watts style overkill. Like splitting them all up, not burying the children with Shanann. I mean, he could have done. I know he didn't have much time to dig the hole, but they were only little girls. Putting them in the oil tanks was very, very disturbed. And I think that's Chris's definition of overkill. That's just my opinion. It's something I've thought about a lot when I was covering the Watts case. But with the Delphi case, it does appear, from the little we know, and obviously we don't have the autopsy report for each girl, we don't have them. We can only go off that little that's been said. And I think that's a description of overkill. So in Richard Allen's mind, did he intend to rape the girls? Did he intend to sexually molest them? Yeah, perhaps. That's probable. And once he'd started the attack, although it says on the warrant for Ronald Logan that the girls didn't appear to fight back. Now, they didn't have defensive wounds, I think that would be said. Maybe they did try to fight back. Maybe that fighting back was verbal rather than physical. And he got mad. He got mad at these two girls. And he raged on them. You know, he literally rage quit on them. He raged. And that's why you've got that overkill. That spilling over of repressed desire all came out against two defenceless teenage girls with their whole lives ahead of them. Snuffed out. That's one theory. Now, even if there was someone else involved, and this was Richard's first murder, but he'd been engaging with people, whether it was Kegan Kline or whether it was someone else, whether there's a ring involved. The fact that Richard's been arrested and accused of this horrible, horrible double murder, I think the police have got very good evidence against him. As I've said in previous videos, I think they've got DNA evidence. It's just my opinion at this stage. But there's still, even if someone else was there, or helped him, or arranged that the girls be there, there's still the overkill question. And for me, that is a sign of rage, repressed desire. Somewhat like Chris Watts. Repressed, desired a new life. Now, Richard Allen, not that he desired a new life, but there was still that repressed desire in him that once released, just all came tumbling out. And that's where you get Mr. Nice Guy turning into an absolute monster. People have come out and spoken about Tony Kline as being very violent. You know, he had violent mood swings. He suffered from bipolar disorder, which perhaps wasn't properly treated, I don't know. But he's a very violent man. And you can imagine someone like him raging on somebody and killing them in a way that is far beyond what was needed, the force that was needed to end their life. You could believe it of Tony Kline. But we don't know Richard Allen, do we? That was an interesting thought process. I didn't intend to bring up Chris Watts today, but I think that is an interesting analogy to think about. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. I've been Michelle. Hope you're well. See you in the next video. It's goodbye from Miss Tillington and Miss Cassie Springer. Hello. Hello. Bye, guys.